the man who wrestled God. We've all heard of him. You may even know the story. But what's he known for? The guy is known for wrestling God, for struggling with God, and ultimately prevailing against God. When we read this passage in Genesis chapter 32, we see that Jacob was a schemer. He tricked his brother out of his birthright. He deceived his father into giving him the blessing that was intended for his brother. And now he's running for his life because his brother wants to kill him. In Genesis 32, verse 24, Jacob is alone and afraid, and he wrestles with God. Now, some have suggested that this isn't really a physical wrestling match, that this was a dream, a vision, or some sort of spiritual exercise. But the text says otherwise. It says that he wrestled with God from evening until the next morning. This was a real, physical struggle between a real, physical man and God himself. Now, why would God allow himself to be physically harmed by a mere mortal? Why would God let this man pull him down into the dirt and beat him up? I mean, if I were God, nobody would be able to touch me, right? But there's more going on here than just brute strength. You see, Jacob didn't win because he was stronger than God. He won because he refused to let go. Listen to these words in Genesis 32, verse 26. And he said, "Let me go, for the sun has risen." And he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Notice that Jacob didn't ask for a blessing. He demanded a blessing. In fact, the Hebrew word for bless in Genesis 32, 26 also means to kneel or to bow down. So Jacob is saying, "I will not let you go. Kneel down and bless me, O God." And notice how the text says that Jacob was no longer called Jacob, but instead he was called Israel. And in that moment, Israel was given victory over God. So what do we learn from this story? What can we learn from this man who wrestled God? Well, first, we learn that God can be reached through the wilderness. When Jacob was alone and afraid, when he was physically exhausted, that's when he encountered God. In fact, many times when God's people are weak and tired, that's when God steps in and helps them. Look at the next verse. And when he saw that he did not prevail against him, God touched his hip socket, and Jacob limped on. So sometimes when we wrestle with God, when we struggle with God, it doesn't feel good. Sometimes God may have to touch us, as he touched Jacob, and put us out of commission. But oftentimes, God's people are only able to recognize God when they're weak and helpless. Secondly, we learn that we must hold on to God. When Jacob was wrestling God, when he was face down in the dirt, he held on to God's cloak and pulled him closer. And so often in life, when things don't go our way, when we experience loss and pain, when we suffer, we forget about God. We let go of his cloak. But we must hold on to God, especially when things are difficult. And the principle is seen in the words of Jesus in Matthew 11:28. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Or as the old hymn says, hold to God till the end. Hold to God no matter what happens. Thirdly, we see that God can be transformed. Jacob began the night as a deceiver, but he ended the night as a man of integrity. In other words, Jacob came to God as a liar, but he left the presence of God as an honest man. You see, Jacob had to change his name because of his encounter with God. He had to limp forward because of his encounter with God. And in a sense, Jacob had to re-identify himself because of his encounter with God. So who was Jacob? Was he a liar? Was he a deceiver? Was he a schemer? No, his name had been changed. He was now Israel, one who wrestles with God. What's your name? How would others describe you? How would you describe yourself? Are you known for your honesty, your kindness, your love? Or are you known for your anger issues, your gossip, your pride, your arrogance? Well, like Jacob, we must re-identify ourselves. We must identify ourselves with the new name that God gives us after we wrestle with him. So what should we do? First, pray. Pray until you know that God has answered. Secondly, hold on to God. Hold on to his promises. Hold on to his presence. Don't let go. Thirdly, re-identify yourself. Look at yourself honestly. Say, God, I need to change. I need to grow. I need to become a new person. And the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is also our God. And he is willing to meet with us. He is willing to wrestle with us. And he is willing to transform us. So don't give up. Keep holding on. Keep praying. Keep believing, because God is worthy to be praised.